So this morning, the title of this morning's talk has changed about 3 different times. Started out to be titled Inclusiveness, and then I changed it to the attitude of inclusiveness. And then this morning, as I was talking to Terry, I said, let's change the title of the talk to Inclusiveness versus Exclusiveness, just to make a point. There's so much involved with the talk this morning. It's going to require a little bit of concentration. If your mind wanders off, you're going to miss something really good. So your challenge this morning, or if you're listening to the YouTube, is to stay concentrated. I'd like to start the talk this morning by reading to you a letter written by Helena Rourke. This is a long time ago, way back in 1929. She says, after the firm realization of hierarchy, we shall, with all our heart, begin a deeper understanding of the meaning of the teaching of life. She wrote, it hurts the heart to feel how little understood are those treasures which the teacher so generously bestows. On these treasures will be founded a new race. Ponder over the majesty of what is given. I feel frightened when I think of the responsibilities that we take upon ourselves when we accept these treasures, knowing that among us are those who still fail to realize all their value for humanity and what is given for distribution as the most essential food for starving souls. Souls that which should lie in the foundation of the new evolution remains with them without appreciation. She wrote, do you feel the call of my spirit? Reread as often as possible your treasures. Collect all the crumbs. I just lost my place. There they are. There must have been a reason. That pause. It's like in music. Pause in music. You know, when you're playing this great symphony, as I used to do, and all of a sudden the entire orchestra, there's no noise, no sound, no music. There's a great pause. And I always wondered, what did the composer think? Why such a pause? They have the 108 musicians no longer playing, just a pause. If it's not to recollect ourselves, you know, to take another deep breath. So, as we are collecting all the crumbs of the teaching, there was a pause. And then she says, with your whole consciousness, merge with these treasures. They will give you such broad and clear understanding of the most complicated problems of existence. The only way will be by absorbing it. And the austere joy of infinite progress will then fill your hearts. My heart longs to inspire you with the joy of majesty and beauty which the teaching of life opens to you. New souls are coming and will multiply. We must be able to hold them. It is necessary to give to everyone according to his mentality. Nothing attracts people so much as the necessary word which liberates their soul and minds and gives them new possibilities. All beings are drawn toward light. This is the first law of the cosmos. The teaching and the ability to give it in full commensurability is the magnet which attracts people and all possibilities. It is that armor which can withstand all attacks, that source which brings selfless and endless joy. But it should be accepted by the heart and not by the head alone. This so touched my heart that I wanted to share it with you, and in fact draw your attention to her words, "Do you hear the call of my spirit?" So we have spirit and matter. The law of spirit is inclusive. The law of matter is isolation, is exclusive. I think that a person cannot really understand this law, feel this law of spirit, feel and understand inclusiveness until they shall with all their heart begin a deeper understanding of the teaching of life. To engage in deeper understanding of the teaching of life, we must stand in the fountain of the outpouring teaching of the great ones. We must. And why is that? It's like, as I was mentioning music a little while ago, I must have played professionally as a violinist for maybe 20 years. And some conductors were really good, some were not. But the music always was the same. This music, if I had not had the opportunity to perform and to practice and engage in the music of the masters, my life would have been like black and white. If you can imagine sitting in the middle of a symphony orchestra filled with very accomplished musicians, all of us playing together, music composed by a master musician, what it was like. Words can't describe it because it was, based on color and sound and rhythm and inspiration and the whole process of integrating the whole, 108 or 120 musicians working together inclusively. We didn't stop to think about the person sitting in the chair next to us, whether we're better, or not as good, or if that percussionist over there was too loud or too soft, or too old or too young. The mind was not involved at all. It was just the result of the experience of being one with the music. So the mind got out of the way. Whether the discomfort is like oftentimes playing the violin, you have to hold a violin up to play a whole symphony orchestra, sometimes 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. During rehearsal, I'd be sometimes painfully aware. It's like, oh, I gotta rest my arm. But when you're in the middle of this beautiful performance, all that tiredness goes away. Whether you're playing better or worse goes away. It's just the inspiration of the moment, and that's what inclusivity is all about. Everything else melts away. This is what it means, as I have learned subsequently, to live the teaching of life. To achieve inclusiveness, the method is not imposing or forcing, but it's transforming. So how does this work? It's like the teaching talks about choosing certain elements in our life. And if we choose the right elements, these elements come together in our physical, emotional, mental, personality life and begins to refine these three aspects of the personality. And in the process of refinement, an integration takes place. And this integration is the first step of inclusiveness. This first step of inclusiveness means that we become like an open channel to the subtle worlds, the higher worlds, where this magnificent, since I'm talking about music, let's say the celestial music of the great ones, of the teaching begins to pour through us. When would this happen? You know, if you're a meditator, it will be at a particular a point of crescendo in your meditation, where you're an open channel and this incredible, beautiful, inclusive, non-separative energy comes into you and inspires you. Then you walk away from that experience and then you plunge your life back into your day-to-day life. But what happens, the magic of it, is it begins to accumulate. These moments begin to accumulate, and this accumulation is part of building the Etakarana bridge. It's just like you're building another part of yourself, another part of the chair, you know, as the teaching oftentimes refers to building the chair, the sacred image. And it can only happen when you are standing in that fountain or flow of life that comes to us from the great ones and from the teaching. So it is not an imposition. It's not a forcing. We go through a process of transformation, and in this process, we increasingly move toward inclusiveness. I wanted to share a little story that happened yesterday afternoon. My great-grandkids came to visit, and I have a 4-year-old, blonde, blue-eyed, most precocious little girl you can imagine. She's very scientific. Pulled out my iPad and said, "Can you download something for me?" 4 years old, absolutely. I would never say no to this little child. She's so beautiful. So we were all sitting out on the upper deck, and she comes over to me and, you know, with my pants, and she said, "Grandma Jolene, your tree is dying." And she's got big eyes, and these tears were welling up in her eyes. And I knew right away the tree she was talking about. I've got this Norfolk Island pine that I bought at Christmas time, you know, that they always put little decorations on and never lives. And so I've been nurturing this little tree. Half of it is gone. And so that morning I knew that I needed to get rid of the dead looking part of the tree, but I didn't have the right implement to cut it down. So here's this little girl with these tears coming out of her eyes. It's dead. This is inclusiveness. You know, she just saw that tree, felt one with the tree. And then I got the result. You know, I felt so bad. So I just talked to her about it. I said, you know, sometimes things die, but look at the other side of that tree. It's blooming, it's beautiful. That's, you know, inclusiveness of the little 4-year-old child. To be inclusive, we must feel spirit, the law of spirit. Once we feel this law of spirit, we begin to live a life of inclusiveness. Now, the teachings of the great ones tell us that to respond to this law of spirit, we must develop these 7 or 8 things, and I'm going to give you the list. Discrimination. See, this is the practical side of the teaching, not the fantasy, not the emotional, not the I wish I could side. You know, the teaching, this is how we get there. This is how we can begin to, well, let's call these are the elements that we're going to choose to put into our life to change our personality so that this path, this journey that we're traveling on this spiritual path becomes a path of joy and beauty. and inclusiveness. So this is the list: discrimination, goal fitness, adaptation, unfoldment, readiness, cooperation, intuition, and renouncement of ego. Helena Rourke writes that each one must find the key to the teaching in his own heart. The understanding of the teaching of life should inaugurate the creativeness of your spirit. So here's this little 4-year-old child, precocious, beautiful, blonde, gorgeous young girl. She's already in the flow of the teaching. The teaching is life. It's not separate from. It is part of life. She's there. You know, and I pray that she stays there. She comes from a very good family, of course. You know, and we will nurture, you know, that spirit. The image of the teacher, the master, the avatar can give an enlightened path. The image, these are the images we want to create every single day. When we wake up in the morning and we sit in front of our meditation altar, or you go outside in nature, you want this image to be part of your consciousness, you know, of a great one, or of the higher ashrams. An image that inspires you. The master, an avatar. That's when we accept within our hearts the chosen image. You're going to find that your heart becomes aflame with love toward all beings. Now, I will guarantee you that others will not understand this until they experience it themselves. Their filter system becomes imposed over who you really are. And they try to make us into who they are. They don't understand how, even if they hate us, that they're in our heart. That we can love those who hate us. Because we're living the life of the Spirit. The inclusive life. But if they're still on the outside living, you know, their personality life, their pains and sufferings of life have caused them to wrap themselves up like a little ear of corn in a husk, you know, then they can't see it. It's very interesting. But when we accept within our hearts the chosen image, we love all beings. It's like the little girl loving the tree that was dying and felt it, the death of that tree. The creative materia lucida, which is cosmic love, serves as embodiment for the high spirit. But this energy is attracted through love. The whole cosmos is upheld by love. See, we don't understand this anymore. We're so jaundiced. I think a lot of people don't even trust in this energy called love because they're so damaged. They've had divorces, they've had separations, they've had rejections, they've been disappointed in life, and so on and so forth. And so they've turned themselves from love to despair, from love to doubt, from love to joylessness. I mean, we know people like that. And they may even be in your own family. But that does not stop you from loving. Love is the greatest magnet. But conceit stops all progress. To develop inclusiveness then, and to evoke a response in our heart to the law of spirit, there are certain values that we must strive, or certain elements that we must strive to put into our life. And let me read these again to you. Discrimination. Discrimination and discernment are very close in meaning. Goal fitness, adaptation, unfoldment, readiness, cooperation, intuition, and renouncement of ego. These 8 values are actually road signs in the process of transformation, of changing yourself from being a materialist to waking up and hearing the beautiful call of your spirit. So in essence, all that exists in the one universe is related to each other. And the transformation process is to take all of these relationships consciously, so into our beingness. Isolation and separatism eventually create so much pain and suffering that the spirit escapes, finally, is released, and discovers the way to inclusiveness. So there is a gift that is perhaps really difficult for us to see through the fog of pain and suffering. But I don't see everybody taking that step where their spirit is released and then they move on to the path of inclusiveness. But I've seen it enough to have faith in what the teaching is telling us, that we can become so filled with our own personal darkness that what happens is that we finally reach out and ask for help, that we're no longer wrapped up in that corn cob and that wrapping that the corn cob comes in, the husk, thank you, that we're no longer wrapped up in that, but it takes either somebody coming and ripping it off, which is very painful, and they'll usually come after you because they don't trust you, because that filter system is saying you've got a hidden agenda going on here. Or they're so concretized, thinking nobody loves them, nobody is here to help them, until an event takes place in their life that they get down on their knees and they yell out, perhaps, for help. That's all you have to do is ask for help, and that call will be heard. Leadership, believe it or not, leadership is based on the law of inclusiveness. A leader tries to include and then to be included with something higher. So this is, maybe we could make up a new law. We could say this is the law of regeneration, where the leader takes all that he is, all that she is, and gives it in an inclusive way to the environment. And in this process of giving, then has made a contact with what is greater, what is higher. And when the higher sees that the leader is giving all that he or she is in an inclusive way, then more is given, more is included. That energy increases. So I think that's the way it works. Inclusiveness means to attract those elements, those values that will help us grow. And in true inclusiveness, we let people and elements nourish themselves and nourish ourselves, making themselves a part of you and making yourself a part of them. This is the law of spirit. This is like the little girl feeling the tree dying. sensing what was going on. By living these 8 values, we are responding to the call of spirit and living within the rays of the great ones. An inclusive person, listen to this, an inclusive person searches for the diamonds of virtues and values. This means that leader is looking for the people that live these virtues, that live these values, and begins to formulate an environment made of these diamonds. So these diamonds can form a group, maybe a constellation, so to speak, where a regenerative force of energy is taking place. Maybe, in their community or in their nation or even beyond. We must, okay, let me back up a minute here. Inclusive people repulse all that is based on self-interest. Self-interest causes disintegration within any formation. So this is something you might want to write down and really think about, that self-interest causes disintegration within any formation. We must exclude all that is false and cosmetic and pretentious and unselfish to find the way leading to inclusiveness. Here's a story. Nasruddin was eating a poor man's diet of chickpeas and bread. That's way out of my range of even imagination. I could have hummus, a little bit of feta cheese maybe on bread. Oh, so this is, took place quite a while ago. Chickpeas, not in hummus. His neighbor, who also claimed to be a wise man, was living in a grand house and dining on sumptuous meals provided by the emperor himself. His neighbor told Nasruddin, "If only you would learn to flatter the emperor and be subservient like I do, you would not have to live on chickpeas and bread any longer." So Nasruddin replied, "And if only you would learn to live on chickpeas and bread like I do, you would not have to flatter and live subservient to the emperor." Do you see, Nasruddin has already excluded all that was false and cosmetic and pretentious from his life. Now, there is a rich industrialist from the north who is horrified to find the southern fisherman seemingly lying lazily beside his boat, smoking a pipe. "Why aren't you out fishing?" said the industrialist. "Well, because I've caught enough fish for the day," said the fisherman. "Well, why don't you catch some more?" "What would I do with it?" "Well, you could earn more money," was the reply. "With that, you could have a motor fixed to your boat to go into deeper waters and catch more fish. Then you would make enough money to buy nylon nets. These would bring you more fish and more money. Soon you would have enough money to own 2 boats, maybe even a fleet of boats. Then you would be a rich man like me." Well, what would I do then? Well, then you would really enjoy life. What do you think I'm doing right now? So the explanation, which is pretty obvious, the fisherman had chosen the life of simplicity. the life of spirit, not the life of ambition. The industrialist could only see a lazy man. The boatman had complete control over his boat, over his personality, and he didn't suffer from envy and desire or materialism. The law of spirit was already nourishing him. He had renounced his ego. So inclusiveness is the process of spiritualization, transformation, transfiguration, and resurrection. Inclusiveness. This is a science of the new century. Maybe we could call it the science of the new evolution. Inclusiveness is the ability to choose the right elements, which will help you achieve your inclusive goal. So you really have to think about the right elements. And unfortunately, I don't have the time to do that this morning, but if you really want to be successful in your life and happy and joyful and progressing more rapidly, on this path of life, stop and think about what are the right elements to choose to achieve your goal. Your progressive goal is to cultivate physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual awareness, not dullness. See, dullness is the opposite of awareness, right? Okay. So we're not, oh man, this is the flood. It's like we're not going to choose things that dull our consciousness. But if we do, we don't have anybody but ourselves to hold that as responsible. We're responsible for our choices, in other words. We can't blame the teacher. We can't blame a co-worker for us making these choices. But we have the ability to make the right choices if we just think about it a little bit. Dull or aware? Will this lead to dulling our emotions, dulling our health, dulling our thinking, dulling our future? Or will these choices, the right elements, bring more life into our beingness? Right elements are those which fit together, fit each other, fit our goal. Inclusiveness is an urge to develop ourselves to such a degree that we are able to use seemingly unrelated elements and make them serve a common goal. There's so much to talk about in there later. To develop yourself means to include yourself in higher service. Inclusiveness is achieved as a level of consciousness where you free yourself from your separative thinking. You see the one essence in all elements, forming the process leading to wholeness. Take a look at your life. From the moment that you can remember, and bring yourself up to today and look at all those elements that you chose. How many of those elements have put you where you are today in a beautiful way? That helped you realize your purpose. I think you'll be really surprised at how these pieces of the puzzle of your life have come together to create the whole. And when you have created the whole, which is a reflection of the purpose of your life, you know that you're breathing with the universal heart, with the cosmic magnet. It doesn't mean there aren't difficulties going on over here and disappointments and worries and so forth. That's just living on this planet. That's just the way it is. But over here, you are intact. You are connected with your life purpose, and your soul is happy. And this will not have been a wasted lifetime. Now, I think I can get through this. Okay, we must include in our consciousness daily thoughts about the solar angel, the master, your ashram, the hierarchy of great ones, and Shambhala. When, look at how this works. Is when you have 5 points that we're all going to include in our consciousness every single day. There's no time to sit here and dislike the people that dislike you. See, there just isn't any time. There isn't any time to worry. What's going to happen to me tomorrow? See, that earthly life is here. If we're not careful, it will break us. It will fracture us. And then all we're going to be concerned about is with the pieces, the fractured pieces. When you focus your consciousness as much as you can on these 5 elements, on hierarchy, on the master, on the ashram, the solar angel, and Shambhala, you're going to be inclusive. And inclusiveness means an increase in light and love in your whole being. You become so powerful that you include those whom you love and those who hate you. Okay? In exclusiveness, you worship yourself. In inclusiveness, you worship others and yourself too. Oh, I've got to read this. Okay, we may go over a little bit this morning. I apologize for that. Francis of Assisi wrote this: "Therefore, let nothing hinder us, nothing separate us, nothing come between us. Wherever we are, in every place, at every hour, at every moment of the day, every day and continually, let all of us hold in our heart and love, honor, adore, serve, praise and bless, glorify and exalt, magnify and give thanks." There are elements which are left alone until they are made ready enough to cooperate. Now, these elements can be a family member. It can be a co-worker in your group or your church, or at work. These are elements which are left alone until they are made ready enough to cooperate with a progressive and a benevolent plan. Inclusive people are cooperative, and their attitude is not affected by the ego of the unintegrated personality. They stand inclusive in their consciousness, and they include you in their labor if you have the qualifications or readiness. An inclusive person considers the rights of people even if they are his enemies. I'm skipping around here. What does it mean to be spiritually inclusive? It means to accept all wisdom and spiritual guidance. I put this up on my Facebook, so if you read my Facebook postings, you'll recognize this. It means to accept all wisdom and spiritual guidance given by great ones in different centuries, in different forms, and use them for the liberation of humanity. So I'm going to close now with a little of what I started, with the words of Helena Rourke, who is the mother of Agni Yoga. It hurts the heart to feel how little understood are those treasures which the teacher bestows so generously. On these treasures will be founded the new race. Ponder over the majesty of what is given. I feel frightened when I think of the responsibility we take upon ourselves when we accept these treasures, knowing that among us there are those who still fail to realize all their value for humanity and what is given for distribution as the most essential food for starving souls. That which should lie in the foundation of the new evolution remains with them without appreciation. Do you feel the call of my spirit? Reread as often as possible your treasures. Collect all the crumbs, and with all your being, merge with them. They will give you such broad and clear understanding in the most complicated problems of existence. The only way will be by absorbing it, and the austere joy of infinite progress will fill your hearts. My heart longs to inspire you with the joy of majesty and beauty which the teaching of life opens to you. And that's it. Is there a lot to absorb, isn't it?